Media Fact Checker. Netflix horror series Something Very Bad is Going to Happen review analysis by The Guardian. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The series is created by Haley Z. Boston and directed by the Duffer Brothers, Stranger Things creators. The central event is a wedding between Nikki, Adam DiMarco, and Rachel, Camila Morrone, at a remote cabin in the woods. Rachel finds a baby locked in a car at a bar before arriving at the cabin. The cabin features a family portrait with an empty chair and a scrubbed-out ex-wife, guarded by stuffed Irish wolfhounds. Jennifer Jason Leigh stars as Victoria, Nikki's mother, who delivers an ominous wedding invitation with the note "Don't marry him." But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 calls the cabin's lighting 2-watt lamps, while Article 2 does not mention specific wattage or lighting issues. Article 1 describes the stuffed Irish wolfhounds as taxidermied dogs with a warning about not looking into their eyes, while Article 2 only mentions ancestral stuffed dogs without this specific detail. Article 1 references a peeping Tom watching Rachel at a bar bathroom, but Article 2 does not mention this scene explicitly. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Amazon's Jury Duty reality hoax series and its second season, Company Retreat. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The first season of Jury Duty aired in 2023 on Freevee, owned by Amazon, and featured Ronald Gladden as the unsuspecting participant. Gladden was paid $100,000 for his involvement in the first season of Jury Duty. The second season, titled Company Retreat, was filmed at a 300,000 square foot site and involved 48 cameras. Anthony Norman, a 25-year-old from Nashville, was the lead participant in the second season, believing he was part of a documentary. Over 10,000 people applied for the second season's role via Craigslist, with applicants vetted for kindness, empathy, and charisma. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 mentions the second season's cash prize was $100,000, while Article 2 states it was $150,000. Article 1 describes Norman's reaction to the reveal as sheer boredom during absurd seminars, while Article 2 focuses on his genuine disbelief and the team's effort to keep him engaged. Article 1 highlights the show's digs at corporate culture as funny and well executed, while Article 2 emphasizes the high stakes and risk of the hoax collapsing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's waste sector faces diesel shortages threatening service disruptions and public health risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Waste Contractors and Recyclers Association of NSW chief Brett Lemon wrote a letter to the Federal Energy Minister about diesel shortages threatening waste collection services. Queensland Waste Recycling Industry Association CEO Alison Price stated some members have received less than half their regular diesel allocations. WA Waste Management and Recycling Association Chief Mike Bobrowicz reported West Australian operators expect only about half their regular diesel allocations. One NSW waste operator was informed they would receive only 12,000 L of their regular fortnightly 50,000 L diesel delivery. Waste industry leaders are scheduled to meet with Assistant Environment Minister Josh Wilson in Canberra this week to discuss fuel supply issues. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources on core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Crane collapse in Dubbo CBD due to storm causes evacuations and no reported injuries. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A crane collapsed in Dubbo's CBD after being buffeted by strong winds around 4 p.m. Buildings in Dubbo CBD were evacuated as a precaution due to the collapse. No injuries were reported from the incident at this stage. The crane operator, a female, was on site but uninjured. Emergency services and multiple ambulance NSW crews attended the scene. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the wind speed as 115 km per hour, while Newscomau does not specify a wind speed. ABC mentions a 150 m exclusion zone, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. Newscomau lists Talbragar Street as closed, but ABC does not mention it. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London treated as antisemitic hate crime. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to Hatzola Northwest, a Jewish volunteer charity, were set on fire in Golders Green, London, on Monday morning, 1:45 a.m. local time. The attack occurred near the Matchsyke Hadath Synagogue on Highfield Road, Golders Green, a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. Explosions were caused by oxygen cylinders on the ambulances, shattering windows in an adjacent apartment block and forcing evacuations. Police confirmed the incident is being investigated as an anti-Semitic hate crime, with counter-terrorism officers leading the inquiry. CCTV footage suggests at least 3 suspects were involved in the arson, though 2 men aged 45 and 47 were arrested on Wednesday, not linked to the attack itself. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states the arrests were made on Wednesday, but Article 3, Guardian, initially reported no arrests had been made at that time. Article 5, Guardian, says the 2 arrested men were released on bail until April, but no other source confirms this bail date or condition specifics. Article 7, news.com.au, claims 3 suspects remain at large, while Article 1, ABC, and Article 2, Guardian, state police are investigating 3 people but only 2 were arrested. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democratic victory in Florida special election flips Trump-backed district near Mar-a-Lago. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Emily Gregory, Democrat, won Florida's 87th State House special election on date. John Maples, Republican, was endorsed by Donald Trump in the race. The district was previously held by Republican Mike Caruso, who won by 19 percentage points in 2024. Donald Trump voted by mail in the special election despite publicly criticizing mail-in voting as fraudulent. Emily Gregory led by 2.4 percentage points, 797 votes, after all votes were counted. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Trump voted by mail despite publicly bashing the method as a source of fraud, while The Guardian says Trump criticized mail-in voting as mail-in cheating during a Tennessee event this week. ABC reports Trump said, "I'm not involved in that" regarding the loss, but The Guardian does not mention this exact quote. ABC includes a specific fraud statistic from Brookings, 0.000043% fraud rate, which is not mentioned in The Guardian. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Testing and reviewing chef's knives for home cooks, focusing on performance, value, and care. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ben Lippitt tested 14 knives over a fortnight for The Guardian, focusing on tasks like dicing shallots, slicing tomatoes, and chopping herbs. The Wusthof Classic Chef Knife, 20 cm, was named the best overall chef's knife by Ben Lippitt in both articles. Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife, 20 cm, was selected as the best budget knife, priced at £43. Helen Simmons, a knife specialist, advised against using knives on stones, bones, frozen food, or hard surfaces like steel or glass. Ben Lippitt recommended against dishwasher use for knives, emphasizing hand cleaning and proper storage on magnetic racks or in boxes. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Wusthof Classic Chef Knife costs £137.11, but Article 2 does not explicitly mention this price. Article 1 lists the Blenheim Forge Santoku knife, 17.5 cm, as the best investment knife, while Article 2 does not mention this specific knife. Article 1 lists the Opinel N-Degree 118 as the best knife for beginners, but Article 2 does not include this recommendation. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Dietary factors and the mind diet's role in preventing dementia and cognitive decline. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Mind Diet, Mediterranean diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay, emphasizes leafy greens, nuts, berries, olive oil, poultry, fish, and limits red meat, butter, cheese, fried foods, and sweets. A 2024 Lancet Commission report identified 14 modifiable risk factors for dementia that could prevent or delay 45% of cases, including high LDL cholesterol, 7% influence, and untreated vision loss, 2%. The Mind Diet is associated with a 15 to 22% reduction in dementia risk according to observational studies, with the strongest effect among Mediterranean-style diets. People adhering most strongly to the Mind Diet retained up to 20% more grey matter over 12 years, corresponding to a 2.5-year delay in brain aging, observational study. The APOE4 gene variant, present in about 1 in 4 people, increases dementia risk and may interact with dietary choices, particularly unprocessed meat consumption. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH The Age claim the Mind Diet's benefits are beyond question for most elements, while ABC notes the evidence on whole grains and brain health remains mixed. SMH The Age emphasize the Mind Diet's strong, consistent evidence for dementia prevention, but ABC highlights that observational studies cannot prove cause and effect. SMH The Age suggests the Mind Diet should be added as a 15th factor in the Lancet Commission's list, while ABC does not address this directly or provide counter-evidence. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NFL player Cam Scatterbo's controversial denial of CTE and asthma legitimacy sparks backlash and apology. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Cam Scatterbo, a 24-year-old New York Giants running back, dismissed chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, as an excuse and asthma as fake during a Bring the Juice podcast appearance in 2025. CTE is a degenerative brain condition linked to repeated head trauma, marked by abnormal tau protein buildup and symptoms including cognitive decline, behavioral changes, and dementia, with definitive diagnosis only possible posthumously. A 2017 Boston University study found CTE in 110 of 111 former NFL players examined, and the NFL acknowledged a link between football and CTE in 2016. Scatterbo was a 4th-round pick out of Arizona State in the 2025 NFL Draft and finished his rookie season with 410 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns in 8 games before an ankle injury ended it. Scatterbo apologized on X, formerly Twitter, for his comments, stating they were a tasteless joke and not meant to downplay the seriousness of the conditions. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Scatterbo called CTE an excuse and asthma fake without specifying intent, while Article 2 clarifies he later claimed these were tasteless jokes not meant seriously. Article 1 mentions a 2023 Boston University study finding CTE in roughly 92% of former NFL players, but Article 2 references a 2017 study finding CTE in 110 of 111 players examined. Article 1 does not mention Scatterbo's mother's response or her personal experience with asthma, which Article 2 includes as part of the apology context. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pauline Hanson's One Nation surge benefiting Labour in Australian elections via electoral system dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pauline Hanson stated it's just the start regarding One Nation's political momentum after recent elections. One Nation secured 20% of the vote in recent elections, while Labour's vote remained stable at 39%. Liberal Party vote collapsed to 19% in the same election cycle. One Nation surged in metropolitan Adelaide, finishing fourth behind Labour, One Nation, and the Greens in many seats. South Australian Liberal leader Ashton Hearn declared a large core of South Australians are sick to death of the status quo. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources as they contain identical text. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump orders ICE agents to assist US airport security during DHS funding shutdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump ordered Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, agents to assist at U.S. airports starting Monday, March 24, 2024, to relieve TSA security line congestion caused by a partial government shutdown. The partial government shutdown began on February 14, 2024, and has lasted 36 days as of March 20, 2024, with TSA workers missing their first full paycheck and set to miss a second on March 27, 2024. Over 400 TSA workers have quit since the shutdown began, according to DHS and NBC News reports. ICE agents are not specifically trained for airport security, which is the domain of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA. The deployment of ICE agents follows the fatal shootings of two American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Pretty, in Minnesota during an immigration crackdown in January 2024, which has drawn criticism of ICE conduct. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports that ICE agents may guard exit lanes or check passenger IDs, while The Guardian does not specify these roles and focuses more on the broader deployment without detailed duties. ABC states that ICE agents are already assigned at many airports for criminal investigations, but The Guardian does not mention this context for the deployment. The Guardian emphasizes Trump's xenophobic rhetoric about Somali immigrants, including references to Ilhan Omar, which is not explicitly detailed in ABC's articles. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Rising national security anxiety among young Australians amid perceived global threats. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College report surveyed over 20,000 Australians between November 2024 and February 2026, with additional focus groups and interviews. Two-thirds, 66 to 68%, of Australians polled in 2026 listed national security as a concern, with a sharp rise among 18 to 24-year-olds from 22% in November 2024 to 55% in February 2026. Nearly half, 45%, of Australians believe a foreign military attack on Australia is probable or very likely within 5 years, according to surveys from July 2025 and February 2026. 69% of respondents in July 2025 considered Australia's involvement in a foreign military conflict within 5 years likely to almost certain. 85 to 89% of respondents viewed climate change impacts, AI-enabled attacks, disinformation, foreign interference, economic crises, and supply disruptions as more likely than not to affect Australia by the end of the decade. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report 45% of Australians believe a foreign military attack is probable, but The Guardian specifies this as likely, very likely, or almost certain, while ABC does not clarify the exact phrasing. The Guardian states 69% of July 2025 respondents considered overseas military involvement likely to almost certain, while News Corp Australia says 68% considered it more likely than not, slightly different phrasing. ABC reports 70% of Australians expect foreign military conflict involvement, slightly higher than the 69% cited by Guardian and News Corp Australia. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate's potential conflict of interest over Trump Tower development. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate received gifts from the Trump Organization during a February 2024 visit to Mar-a-Lago, including meals, accommodation, and airport transfers valued at $500 or more, as declared in his Register of Interests. The Trump Organization signed a $1.5 billion deal with Altus Property Group for a Trump-branded 91-story tower in Surfers Paradise, Australia, just days after Tate's Mar-a-Lago visit, February 12 to 14, 2024. Tate met with U.S. President Donald Trump and his son Eric Trump during his Mar-a-Lago stay. The proposed Trump Tower in Surfers Paradise would include a 6-star resort hotel, 270 luxury apartments, a retail plaza, and a beach club, and developers claim it would be the tallest building in Australia. An online petition opposing the Gold Coast Trump Tower has already received tens of thousands of signatures. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two ABC articles. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff 24-hour strike over pay and conditions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 2 decades. The strike began at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, affecting TV, radio, and digital services across Australia. ABC switched to BBC World Service programming to replace flagship shows including Asterisk 7.30 with Sarah Ferguson Asterisk and Asterisk News Breakfast Star. The Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, MEAA, and Community and Public Sector Union, CPSU, organized the strike over a 10% pay rise offer, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 and 3. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks stated staff costs account for 60% of the ABC budget, and the offer was described as appropriately balanced. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the ABC's TV news channel relied almost entirely on BBC content except for Tim Eyre's speech, a asterisk Planet America asterisk repeat, an extended asterisk question time asterisk with House of Representatives feed, while Article 2 says the fate of the 7 p.m. news bulletins was unclear and only asterisk news breakfast asterisk and asterisk 7.30 asterisk were confirmed to be replaced by BBC content. Article 1 reports Marks was very sorry about the strike's effect on listeners during an earlier interview with Hamish MacDonald, but Article 3 states Marks apologized to audiences for disruption and admitted feeling terrible about pulling services. No direct quote about being very sorry is present in Article 3. Article 2 claims the MEAA stated staff were legally protected to spend up to 5 minutes on air discussing the strike, while Article 3 does not mention this specific time limit or legal protection detail. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former AFL player Lee Ryswyk becomes first openly gay male player in league history. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lee Ryswyk is the first past or present AFL player to publicly come out as gay. Ryswyk played one AFL match for the Brisbane Lions in 2005 against Fremantle at Subiaco Oval. He was delisted by the Brisbane Lions at the end of the 2005 season after his AFL debut. Ryswyk played 226 matches for North Adelaide in the SANFL and is a life member of the club. He came out publicly during an interview on Joy 94.9's Gay FL radio program in 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between sources regarding core factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government appoints controversial ex-police officer to Legal Aid Board amid Palm Island tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darren Robinson, a former Townsville police detective, was appointed to Queensland's Legal Aid Board by Attorney General Deb Frecklington in February 2024 after the LNP government replaced all Labor-appointed members. Robinson was a senior sergeant, then Sen SGT, and friend of Christopher Hurley, the officer accused of causing Mulrunji Dumaji's death in custody on Palm Island in 2004. Robinson investigated a prior complaint against Hurley in 2004, ruling it fictitious. The inquest later described his investigation as superficial, biased and misleading, and his conclusion as dishonest and flew in the face of objective evidence. The 2015 federal court civil case, Justice Mortimer's findings, alleged Robinson conveyed speculative, stereotyped and generalized suspicions about Palm Island residents to police, including during raids with heavily armed tactical units. The Crime and Misconduct Commission recommended in 2015 that Robinson and 3 other officers be disciplined for their roles in the Palm Island events, but no disciplinary action was taken. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 quotes Justice Mortimer's 2015 findings as explicitly stating Robinson well knew there was no real danger during raids, while Article 2 does not repeat this exact phrasing but focuses on Bo's broader criticism of integrity. Article 1 includes Robinson's alleged post-riot advice to Jacinta Barry, denied by Robinson, about not seeking police help, while Article 2 omits this specific allegation entirely. Article 1 cites Frecklington's defense of Robinson's deep expertise and genuine understanding of vulnerable communities, whereas Article 2 highlights Bo's claim that Robinson's appointment is a slap in the face to Dumaji's family. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Meta ordered to pay $375 million in New Mexico child exploitation case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A New Mexico jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million in civil penalties for violating New Mexico's consumer protection laws in a child exploitation case, Guardian, ABC. The lawsuit was brought by New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres's office in December 2023, Guardian, ABC. The trial lasted nearly 7 weeks, Guardian, and the jury deliberated for less than 1 day, Guardian, ABC. Meta plans to appeal the ruling, Guardian, ABC. The lawsuit followed a 2-year Guardian investigation, Guardian, and an undercover operation by Torres's office in 2023, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the jury awarded $375 million in penalties, maximum under law, while ABC notes the state sought $2 billion but the jury awarded $375 million, though both agree the final amount was $375 million. The Guardian reports Meta accused Torres of cherry-picking select documents, while ABC does not mention this accusation. The Guardian details Meta's encryption of Facebook Messenger as a key issue blocking evidence, but ABC does not explicitly mention this as a central point. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump's Pearl Harbor joke during White House meeting with Japan's PM Sanai Takeichi. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump joked about Japan's 1941 Pearl Harbor attack during a White House press conference on December 7, 2023, responding to a question about U.S. strikes on Iran. Trump's exact words included, "We didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor?" The Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takeichi visibly reacted with discomfort, shifting in her seat and widening her eyes during Trump's remark. The Pearl Harbor attack occurred on December 7, 1941, killing 2,390 Americans and leading to the U.S. declaring war on Japan the next day. Japan's constitution prohibits the use of force except for self-defense, limiting its military involvement in conflicts like the Iran War. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report Trump's Pearl Harbor joke occurred during a White House press conference, but the SMH describes it as happening during a pre-meeting press conference without specifying the exact timing. The Guardian and ABC both state Trump's son Eric Trump praised the joke on X, but only The Guardian includes the exact quote, one of the great responses to a reporter in history. The ABC and SMH mention Trump's earlier comments about D-Day, but only The Guardian provides the specific quote, "It was not a pleasant day for you." This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Italian PM Giorgia Meloni's referendum defeat on judicial reform and its political fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Giorgia Meloni's government proposed a referendum to reform Italy's judiciary, separating judges and prosecutors and altering the Superior Council of the Judiciary, CSM. The referendum was held over 2 days, Sunday through Monday, with 53.2 to 54% of voters rejecting the reform, while 46.8 to 46% supported it. Turnout reached a record 58.5 to 59% in the referendum, surpassing initial low turnout forecasts. Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party leads in polls at approximately 30%, but her personal approval ratings are now weakened by the defeat. The referendum campaign featured inflammatory rhetoric from Meloni and her ministers targeting the judiciary, framing it as a battle over independence. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states turnout was 58.5%, Interior Ministry data, while ABC reports 59%, official figures. Guardian Article 1 reports the yes vote at 46%, but Guardian Article 3 specifies 46.8% and ABC cites just over 46%. Guardian Article 1 mentions Meloni's Brothers of Italy party leads at about 30% in polls, while Guardian Article 3 does not provide a specific poll number but implies stability. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. First NFL regular season game in Australia at MCG between Rams and 49ers on September 11th. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The first NFL regular season game in Australia will be played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, MCG, on Friday, September 11th, 2025, between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. The kickoff time for the game is 10:35 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. General admission tickets will start at $140 and standing room tickets at $95, with sales beginning April 8, 2025, at 10 a.m. via Ticketmaster. The NFL ANZ General Manager is Charlotte Orford. The game is part of the NFL's push into the Pacific region, with both teams, Rams and 49ers, holding international marketing rights for Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, mentions the game is on September 11th, but Article 2, Newscomau, initially states the game is on September 10th before correcting it to September 11th in Article 3. Article 1, ABC, does not mention the Rams' Super Bowl 56 win or the 49ers' Super Bowl 58 runner-up status, while Article 2, Newscomau, explicitly states these details. Article 1, ABC, does not mention the economic impact of the game being like nothing the country has ever seen or the tourism benefits, which are highlighted in Article 2, Newscomau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Death of married at first sight expert Mel Schilling from bowel cancer at age 54. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Mel Schilling died on Tuesday, the 26th of March, 2024, at age 54 from bowel colon cancer that metastasized to her brain. Schilling was first diagnosed with colon cancer in December 2023, with a 5 cm tumor removed via surgery. In February 2024, routine scans revealed small nodules in her lungs indicating metastasis. She underwent 16 rounds of chemotherapy over 2 years before radiotherapy sessions. Schilling joined Married at First Sight Australia in 2016 for its second season and later appeared on the UK edition in 2021. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Schilling's daughter is 11 years old, 2013 birth, but The Guardian and the age state she is 10, 2014 birth. ABC and The Guardian state Schilling's final diagnosis, brain metastasis, occurred over Christmas 2025, but the age and SMH clarify it was December 2025, implying late 2025, not 2025 calendar year. ABC notes Schilling's light was starting to fade in March 2024, but the age and SMH specify she revealed this on March 13, 2024, no year conflict but precision differs. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement, Farmers' Criticism versus Government Defence. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement was announced on Tuesday after 8 years of negotiations between Ursula von der Leyen, EU President, and Anthony Albanese, Australian PM. The agreement includes tariff-free exports for Australian wine, with industry estimates of $14.5 million annual savings for wine exporters. Australian beef exporters will gain access to 30,600 tonnes of beef and 25,000 tonnes of lamb to the EU under the deal. ABC, 30,600 beef, Newscomau, 35,000 beef, 31,000 lamb. The agreement removes the passenger vehicle tariff, 5% tax on EU-sourced vehicles, and introduces a lower luxury car tax rate for electric vehicles. The deal opens professional recognition pathways for Australian workers in legal, accounting, architecture, engineering, and health services within the EU. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports beef quotas at 30,600 tonnes, while Newscomau reports 35,000 tonnes. Both claim these are the agreed volumes. ABC states lamb quotas at 25,000 tonnes, but Newscomau claims 31,000 tonnes. Both sources cite these as the deal's figures. ABC describes the beef-lamb quotas as well short of industry demands, 50,000 beef, 67,000 lamb, while Newscomau frames them as a 700% 5x increase over current levels. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East war and rising prices. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Energy Minister Chris Bowen stated Australia's fuel supply is fine and provided state-by-state breakdowns of shortages during question time, Article 1. Petrol prices in Australia have risen to over $2.56 per litre due to the Middle East conflict, Article 1. Hundreds of service stations across Australia are without at least one type of fuel, Article 1 and Article 2. Western Australia's Premier Roger Cook appointed a fuel security state controller to prepare for future challenges, Article 2. Pauline Hanson took flights on Gina Rinehart's private jet 6 times in the past 6 months, with disclosures delayed beyond the 35-day register requirement, Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states diesel flashpoint standards were relaxed this week, but Article 2 does not mention this detail. Article 1 reports the coalition accused Bowen of not acting like serious people, while Article 2 does not include this direct quote or accusation. Article 1 claims the opposition is not looking to be constructive, but Article 2's Basil Zempilas later expressed willingness to work with the government. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia approves massive coal seam gas expansion in Queensland until 2081. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government approved a coal seam gas expansion project, Australia Pacific LNG, in Queensland's Surrott and Bowen basins until 2081. The project includes up to 1,695 new gas wells, 1,545 kilometers of gas and water pipelines, and 3 processing facilities. The project is expected to produce about 2,033 petajoules of gas and operate until 2061, with an extension to 2081 for environmental compliance. The project's public environment report estimated 9 million tons of CO2 emissions during construction and operation, plus 111 million tons from burning the gas. Australia Pacific LNG is a joint venture of ConocoPhillips, Origin Energy, and Sinopec. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 126 environmental conditions, while ABC reports 120 conditions. The Guardian states the project's total lifetime emissions are 120 million tons, but ABC does not mention this figure. The Guardian highlights the project as the 36th fossil fuel approval by the Albanese government, which ABC does not reference. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland police shoot man with alleged knife threats in Logan Central Shopping Centre. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A man in his 30s was shot by police in Logan Central, Queensland, on Saturday evening around 6 p.m. The incident occurred at Carmody Centre on Ewing Road, near Carmody Street, Logan Central. Police were called after reports of a man armed with a knife making threats. The man was shot in the abdomen by police after allegedly approaching them with a weapon. The victim was treated with first aid by police and taken to Princess Alexandra Hospital, where he remains in a stable condition. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the man is 27 years old, while ABC describes him as in his 30s. News Kamau says the incident occurred overnight without a specific time, while ABC specifies about 6 p.m. News Kamau does not mention police attempting to negotiate with the man before the shooting, which ABC does. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran escalation over Strait of Hormuz and energy infrastructure threats in 2026 war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump gave Iran a 48-hour deadline, until 23:44 Greenwich Mean Time on March 25, to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz without threat, or face US strikes on Iran's power plants, per News Kamau, ABC, Guardian, X2, SMH, and Guardian, X2. Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated that if Iran's power plants or infrastructure are targeted, vital infrastructure as well as energy and oil infrastructure across the entire region will be considered legitimate targets and will be irreversibly destroyed, per News Kamau, Guardian, X2, and ABC, X2. Iran's Military Operational Command Qatem al-Anbiya warned that if the US targets Iran's power plants, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and will not reopen until Iran's destroyed power plants are rebuilt, per News Kamau, ABC, Guardian, X2, and SMH. Iran's missiles struck southern Israeli cities Dimona and Orod on March 23, injuring approximately 200 people, including children, and damaging buildings, per Guardian, X2, SMH, and ABC. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to all shipping except vessels not linked to Iran's enemies, US-Israel, per News Kamau, Guardian, X2, and SMH. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Kamau report that Iran's military explicitly stated the Strait of Hormuz would be closed to all shipping except vessels not linked to Iran's enemies, but SMH and Guardian only mention US-Israel as enemies without specifying all enemies. Guardian, X2, and SMH report that Iran's missiles targeting Diego Garcia were not intended to strike Israel, while ABC does not mention this distinction. Guardian, X2, and SMH report that Israel's air defenses failed to intercept missiles in Dimona and Orod, but News Kamau and ABC do not specify whether the missiles were intercepted or not. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar reduces NZ flights due to rising jet fuel prices amid global fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar is reducing 12% of services on some flights between Auckland and Sydney, and Auckland and Brisbane, starting May. Jetstar cited rising jet fuel prices as the reason for flight reductions, directly linked to the Middle East conflict. Air New Zealand also reduced flights earlier this month, March 16 to May 3, cutting 5% of its total domestic and international schedule, mainly in lower demand or off-peak times. Vietnam Airlines plans to cancel more than 20 domestic flights weekly starting next month due to looming jet fuel shortages. Australia's fuel crisis includes 8% of service stations nationwide without one or more grades of fuel, 560 stations affected as of reporting. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Jetstar's 12% reduction applies to some flights between Auckland, Sydney and Auckland Brisbane, while Newscomau specifies over 55 flights have been cut from these routes and Sydney Queenstown, via Melbourne. Newscomau reports 8% of Australian service stations, 560, lack fuel, but ABC does not provide a specific national percentage or total stations affected. ABC mentions Air New Zealand's 5% reduction as unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices, while Newscomau does not repeat this specific phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US federal judge blocks Pentagon's press access policy under Trump administration. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A federal judge, Paul Friedman, blocked key portions of the Pentagon's press access policy introduced in October 2025, ruling it unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The policy prohibited journalists from soliciting unauthorized information from military personnel and revoked credentials of outlets refusing to sign the new policy. Of 56 news outlets in the Pentagon Press Association, only one agreed to sign the new policy, leading to the loss of passes for the remaining outlets. The Pentagon assembled a new press corps consisting of pro-Trump outlets and media personalities after major outlets left. The New York Times filed a lawsuit against the Pentagon, alleging the policy violated free speech protections and gave the Pentagon unfettered discretion to revoke passes. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the policy was introduced in October 2025, while ABC does not specify the exact month but refers to it as a 2025 change. The Guardian states the policy prohibited journalists from soliciting information that the Defense Department didn't directly provide, while ABC does not explicitly mention this specific prohibition. The Guardian notes the Pentagon's policy was approved by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, but ABC does not mention Hegseth's name in this context. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical cyclone Narelle's unprecedented journey across northern Australia and potential impacts on WA. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tropical cyclone Narelle formed in the Coral Sea off Queensland on March 4, 2026, and has since travelled across northern Australia, affecting Queensland, the Northern Territory, and threatening Western Australia. Narelle made landfall in far north Queensland as a Category 4 system on March 7, 2026, with sustained winds of 195 km per hour and gusts up to 270 km per hour, causing widespread damage and flooding. The cyclone crossed the Northern Territory coast near Numbulwar as a Category 3 system on March 9, 2026, bringing destructive winds and heavy rainfall, with gusts up to 190 to 200 km per hour. Ex-tropical cyclone Narelle re-intensified into a Category 1 cyclone off the Kimberley coast on March 11, 2026, and is forecast to strengthen further to Category 3 or 4 as it approaches the WA coast. Perth and the southwest of WA are expected to receive significant rainfall from Narelle, with falls of up to 50 mm in Perth and higher totals in the Wheatbelt and Great Southern regions. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and The Guardian both report that Narelle is expected to bring significant rainfall to Perth, but ABC suggests it may be as a tropical low or Category 1 system, while The Guardian does not specify the exact category for Perth impacts. The Guardian reports that Narelle was downgraded to a Category 2 system as it moved through the Gulf of Carpentaria, while ABC states it was downgraded to a tropical low after crossing the NT coast. ABC and The Guardian both report that Narelle is expected to bring destructive winds to WA's Pilbara region, but ABC specifies gusts up to 275 km per hour, while The Guardian does not provide a specific gust speed for this region. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicola Ollis-Lages finishes as silver medalist in women's high jump at World Indoor Championships. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicola Ollis-Lages won silver in the women's high jump at the World Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland. Yaroslava Mahuchik won gold with a clearance of 2.01 meters. Ollis-Lages, Yulia Levchenko, Ukraine, and Angelina Topic, Serbia, shared silver after all clearing 1.99 meters. Ollis-Lages cleared 1.99 meters on her first attempt, equaling her indoor personal best. Eleanor Patterson, Australia, finished 7th with a clearance of 1.93 meters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Ollis-Lages was a little surprised to be among the top 4, while ABC does not mention this specific reaction. The Guardian describes Eleanor Patterson's performance as suffering early failures, while ABC does not use this phrasing. The Guardian notes Peter Bol had raced indoors only twice in his life before the event, while ABC does not specify this exact detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.